Okay, welcome to our 9th Sunoikisis Digital Classics Common Session. Today we have Dimitar, Illiev and Professor Mirena Slavova from the University of Sofia. Today we are going back to the north of the Aegean Sea because we are going to Thrace, to Thracia, and so we have a common session about Thucydides and Thrace, and you have the slides for this common session, and also a link to a Google map produced by the students at the University of Sofia. And so the topic is Thucydides and Thrace, linking text, objects, and places. So Dimitar, you can start.
Thank you. Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining this common session today. Now I will share my screen so you can see the presentation also.
Okay.
So the object of our presentation today will concern several major points of interest. First, we'll talk about the Greek world and Thrace, and we will explore the contact zone, which is the whole of the North Aegean, which is also very connected to the events during the Peloponnesian War. We will explore the link between Thucydides and Thrace, the personal link between Thucydides and Thrace, and also the way Thrace and the events and places and people in Thrace I described in Thucydides' histories. And we will also, as long as we have time, we will also discuss how this interconnection between the Greek world and Thrace during the events of the Peloponnesian War is reflected or can be linked with objects, artifacts, coins, inscriptions, toponyms, etc. from the region. Our main point of concern actually is that we put the events which we have been discussing here in our Sunoikisis course in a broader local context, which encompasses more or less the whole of the Balkans, or at least the southern part of the Balkan Peninsula, and explore the political, cultural, ethnical, and linguistic contacts that exist between the Greek population and the Greek cities which are at war in the period concerned, and the whole ethno-linguistic background which existed on the Balkans at the same period. By linking and by making our students link, we'll present some results from the work with our students, by linking texts with places and also objects which are related to the places or are broadly related to the time period in concern. It will also be accompanied with a parallel study of international scholars which have been discussed here for the past weeks, together with some local scholars which for obvious reasons are not that well known to the international scholarly community. And by linking all this, I think that we'll present something which will be of broader interest to the audience of the Sunoikisis. One of these local scholars, the Bulgarian professor Margarita Tacheva, has once called the Peloponnesian War the First Balkan War. And of course this metaphor is a bit far-fetched, but you can really look at the Peloponnesian War as a conflict from a broader point of view, because at some point it engaged not only the allies of Sparta, the Peloponnesian League, and all the allies and tributaries of Athens, the Athenian League, but also it involved the Thracian kingdom of the Odrysae, the Odrysian kingdom, and its king Sitalces, as well as his sons Sparodokos and Seotes I, and also the Macedonian kingdom with its king Perdiccas, his brother Philippus, and his nephew Amyntas. So the relationships between these two kingdoms and the dynastical struggles inside each of them reflected largely, had a large impact on the events that has been going on in the 20s of the 5th century BC in the North Aegean, and that were the object of many passages in Thucydides, which we will also see. So first, let us have a broader look at the North Aegean, which you see as a map. It is a bit later map. It's from the digital atlas of the Roman Empire, but most of the places are the same since Thucydides' time, as a zone of contact. It has always been, and up to this day, it always is, a zone of contact between different cultures and between different ethnicities and different languages. Probably a special interest, especially for the international audience, will be the sanctuary. Here you see from Google Maps a snapshot, a sanctuary of Zone, which is right on the opposite side, on the Perea of Samothraki. Tassos, Samothraki, very near today's Alexandroupoli, which was a mixed settlement of Thracians and Greeks, which had a great sanctuary to Apollo, with some inscriptions, both in Greek and also in Thracian, which date from 6th century BC, so to say, approximately 100 years before the period we're here dealing with. But it is very interesting because this settlement has been a zone of not only cultural but also linguistic contact that has been going on for at least several centuries. The excavations there were done by a Greek archaeologist, Madame Tsatsopoulou, and the inscriptions were given to Claude Brix, the famous scholar Claude Brix that published together with Marc Lejeune the Phrygian inscriptions, and he has some preliminary conclusions which you can see in this paper quoted here, which can also be seen online. It is in French.
And Dimitar, we are still at the first slide. I think maybe you can start your presentation.
Why so?
Because
I shared my screen.
Yes. Okay. Now.
Do you see?
Yes.
Do you see this?
Yeah, but for the last 10 minutes we were only seeing the first slide.
Yeah.
So if you could
go
quickly back.
Sorry, but you do have them. So now yeah. You see the map of the region. Here you see Zone. Do you see it?
No. But the map is in the Google.
No, but they have a snapshot.
Now we can see it.
Now do you see the paper by Brix?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So in Samothraki, as you can see, please tell me to stop if you don't see something. As you can see on the slide, as Brix preliminary concluded, unfortunately these excavations have not been published and probably will not see the light of the day ever. But here you see the preliminary study by Brix. There on Samothrace, in the sanctuary of the Greek gods and also of Cybele, there are 65 indigenous in Thracian language graffiti on vessels. And there are 36 inscriptions in Zone, which are in Greek, and 220 indigenous, of which some...
We are still waiting the next slide.
Do you see the inscriptions now?
No.
What is going on?
No, I know. Sometimes the connection is... Okay, now we can see it.
So this is what Brix has published as Thracian inscriptions from Zone. Thracian, the language which was still spoken by the time Thucydides as a general arrived in this region several generations later. Maybe you can say something about this, Professor Slavova?
I would like to say only the fact that we have great morphological similarities between the Greek and the Thracian language illustrated by these inscriptions, which gave to brings the idea to speak of Sprachbund, special linguistic aliens here on the Aegean coast. This is very important because the Thucydides himself is a specific symbol of this coexistence of Thracian and Greek element in this area, because as we know, he has maybe Thracian origin, and his wife is also a Thracian.
Yes, yes. Can you see the other slide with the inscriptions? Now I have changed them.
No. Now yes. Now
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
For example, Apollon in Thracian is Abolos, only in the second declension, not in the third as it is in Greek.
Yes, and it's very, very similar also phonetically. And here you can see, of course, if you can, from the same region, the coins of the Adonian tribes. Do you see them?
Wait a second, and then. Yes, now we can see them.
Oh, yeah.
So these are there are several sets of Adonian coins which date from the late 6th to the first half of the 5th century BC, on which you can see that Professor Slavova has dealt with them in a publication first, and you can see some examples. Here it has some iconographical parallels with the Greek coins from Tassos, for example.
Yes, and maybe these coins illustrate the famous myth of Hermes, who stole, as we know, the 50 oxen from Apollonius from Pieria, and Homerus tell us about this event.
Yes.
Maybe this is Hermes who leads
Yes,
two oxen.
Apollo's
But
cattle.
the special thing about these coins is that they the inscriptions on these coins are engraved with scripts of the Eastern Ionians and the Cycladics, the Cycladic islands. This means that we have here a common area of graphic systems and scripts, which means that the Thracians are a part of this world, of the world of the alphabet, which comes from the Phoenician prototype.
Yes, and it comes also, as Briggs concluded, it comes probably the Thracian variety of the alphabet that we find in Zone comes directly from Phoenician and has developed in parallel to what we see in Eastern Greek alphabets. So it's really a local tradition which is very, very specific. And you can see that from an earlier point up to Thucydides times, as we will see after a while. Here are the Edonoi. This is where the Edonoi or Edonai or Edones were. You see at the mouth of Strymon, which will be where Amphipolis will be later. Actually, they were the first who expelled the population of Amphipolis during its first attempt at colonization. And now you can see, can you see this slide with Marcellinus Vita Thucydidi? Yeah?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Okay, so now we're gonna look for a while at some texts, which is the biography of Thucydides by a certain Marcellinus. He was from the 6th century. He was a late antique grammarian and scholar, and who made scholia to Thucydides, and he wrote his life. And from the life of Thucydides, as well also from some other sources, we know that, for example, he had a father whose name was Oloros, and he was, as you can see from this quotation here, he was a homonymous to an Oloros who was a king of the Thracians, and his mother was Hegesipule, and she was also probably derived from there. And the kin of Thucydides, the genus of Thucydides, is thought to have something in common with the genus of Miltiades, the elder Miltiades, who became a ruler, a tyrant of what is today the peninsula of Gallipoli, the Chersonesus Peninsula, the so-called Thracian Chersonesus or Thracian Hellespont, during the end of the 6th century BC, because of as Marcellinus says, because of a local conflict between two Thracian tribes, the Thracians and the Dolonkians, the Dolonkoi, and the inhabitants of Apsintos. And as you can see here, a very curious, actually, testimonium. They, distressed by war and having suffered not a little evil, they took refuge in the oracle of a god. It doesn't say which god is it. They were not deceived in their hopes, for they were given an oracle that the most able man would be their leader, who would call them with hospitality, xenia, as they were wandering.
We don't have the slide. Wait a second.
Now?
Yes.
Yes, it looks as is there is some problem when I put it on full screen. I don't know. So now you can see it.
Yes. Yes, we can see the slide, yes.
So when, on their return from the oracle, they chanced upon Miltiades. This is the elder Miltiades, who was seated before the boundaries of Attica. And he was, as they say, he was vexed at the tyranny and was seeking a just escape. And when he saw them, he accepted them as guests, and he accepted to be their leader after they told him their story. And so, as they say, the rest is history.
Do you see the slide?
Do you see the slide?
When you want. Okay.
Yes, here you can see the Thracian Peninsula, on which the king of Miltiades, the elder, was a ruler. Were rulers for a very long time, for the whole of the 6th century, the first decades of the 5th century. And here you see also a portrait of Miltiades the Great, which was the younger Miltiades, which is also of the same king. I think he was a nephew of Miltiades the Elder. And then the whole of the family moved back to Athens. And the father of Thucydides is thought to have moved back with them during the Persian expedition, during the Persian invasion of this region, which happened at the end of the last decade of the 6th century BC. That's why Thucydides personally had some relations with the region, and probably it is also known that, now you will see this, it is also known that he had a great estate in this place called Skaptehule or Skaptesile, in Greek, probably of Thracian origin, I don't know, which was right on the opposite side of Tassos, which was probably on the foothills of the great mountain, which is above today's Kavala, which is Pangeon or Kushnica in Bulgarian, and Parnardak. And he had gold mines. He had gold mines in this region, which is, as it is known, a very, very rich in gold gold and in all other sort of region. It is not by chance, as you can see on this map, that there are a lot of settlements even today in what is today's northern Greece that are called Chrysoupoli and things like that. And on the Bulgarian side of the border there is Zlatograd, which means the city of gold, which is this region has been and still is to some extent rich in
something. We, according to Marcellinus, Thucydides has written his history sitting under a tree in this estate. This is interesting fact. Yes.
And this is why they sent him some decades later. This is why they sent him to be general with the part of the Athenian fleet precisely in Thasos, as was seen in the previous sessions. As he himself states, he had a great influence in the region because he was one of the richest and influential persons in the region, and he had a great role at the Siege of Amphipolis, about which we will talk a bit later. Now, we should look at some passages from Thucydides. We give them here in English translation. The moment in which Thrace and the Thracian kingdom enters Athenian policy, and so enters the relationships between Athens, its allies in the region, its relationships with the kingdom of Macedon, which were also a bit complicated, and generally the Odrysians took sides at this conflict between Athens and the Peloponnesian League. At first we see that by the cooperation of a certain Nymphodoros from Abdera, which is also a Athenian ally city from the region, he managed to get himself acquainted with Sitalces. Sitalces, he married his sister to the Thracian king Sitalces, and he was at the same time he was made proxenus by the Athenians, and he was sent to Athens. And the Athenians, as Thucydides, had hitherto considered him their enemy, but he had great influence with Sitalces, and they wished this prince to become their ally, to become allied to the Odrysian kingdom. Sitalces was the son of Thrace and the king of the Thracians. And here we have a very curious example of how Thucydides conducts his historical survey. He said that Thrace, King Thrace, which was the father of Sitalces, was the first to establish the great kingdom of the Odrysians on a scale quite unknown to the rest of Thrace. We will see a map at some point later. A large portion of Thracians being independent by that period. And so Sitalces, the son of Thrace, was now sought as an ally by the Athenians, who desired his aid in the reduction of the Thracian towns and of Perdiccas, who was by that time the king of Macedon, and he was hesitating between Athens and Sparta. Coming to Athens, Nymphodoros, the Abderite, concluded the alliance with Sitalces and made his son Sadocus, which was supposed to inherit the throne, but he was the prince regent at that time, an Athenian citizen, and promised to finish the war in Thrace by persuading Sitalces to send the Athenians a force of Thracian horse and targeteers to squash the revolt which was there in the Chalcidian policies in the northern Aegean. He also reconciled them with Perdiccas, the same Nymphodoros, and induced them to restore Thermae, which was on the site of the later Thessaloniki, upon which Perdiccas at once joined the Athenians and Phormio, the Athenian general, in an expedition against the Chalcidians. So this Nymphodoros made allies to the Athenians, both the Thracian king Sitalces and the king Perdiccas. But Sitalces and Perdiccas themselves were not in very good relationships, which will pose some problems to the Athenians and to the Macedonian kingdom in a while. So thus Sitalces, says Thucydides, son of Thrace, king of the Thracians, and Perdiccas, son of Alexander, king of the Macedonians, became allies of Athens. The next year, we see this same Sparadocus, who was given an Athenian citizenship, intervening at the expense of Sparta and to the benefit of Athens. In the second book, Thucydides says that at the end of the same summer, the summer of 430 BCE, Aristeos the Corinthian and the Lacedaemonian ambassadors Aneristus, Nicolaus, and Stratodemus, and some other people from Tegea and Argos, were on their way to Asia in the hope of persuading the king, this means the Persian king, which had its satrap in Asia Minor, to give them money and join in the war. They went first of all to Sitalces, in the court of Sitalces, which was on their way, son of Thrace in Thrace, wishing, if possible, to detach him from the Athenians and induce him to lead an army to the relief of Potidea, which was on the Chalkidian peninsula, Chalkidiki, which was still blockaded by Athenian forces. They also wanted him to convey them across the Hellespont on their intended journey to Pharnaces, the son of Pharnabazus, who was to send them on to the king. This was the local Persian satrap, which was supposed to bring them to the king in order to make the Persian king an ally of the Lacedaemonians. But at the time of the arrival of two Athenian envoys, Learchus, the son of Callimachus, and Ameniades, the son of Philemon, also was at the court of Sitalces. So the Athenian envoys who were at the court of Sitalces at the same time, they entreated his son Sadocus, who had been made an Athenian citizen, to deliver the envoys into their hands, and that they might not find their way to the king, and so injure their city. So Sadocus, which was Athenian ally and citizen, entrusted this Lacedaemonian and Peloponnesian envoys in the hands of the Athenians, approximately 1 year after he had gained Athenian citizenship and after his father became an ally to the Athenians. So this is an important intervention of the Thracian prince in favor of the Athenians. He consented in sending a body of men with Learchus and Amenides before they embarked, as they were on their way to Thrace, to the vessel in which they were going to cross the Hellespont, seized them. They were then, in accordance with the other orders of Sadocus, handed over to the Athenian envoys, who were at the same time at the court of Sitalces, who conveyed them to Athens. And when they arrived in Athens, they were put to death. And you can see the whole story in details on the slide. And it is interesting that this story is also mentioned in passing in the 7th book of Herodotus, which was a contemporary of the events, although he writes about the events which were earlier. But he makes a short digression in order to also mention this story. And you can compare the texts in parallel. And of this Sparadocus, who was an Athenian citizen, here you can see some coins. His father Sitalces, unfortunately, has not left us with any coins, but in the Bulgarian numismat Mushmov, in his collection of ancient coins of the Balkan Peninsula, which originally appeared in Bulgarian, but it is now to be found online on this site that you can see, together with all the pictures. Here you see some representations of coins belonging to this prince, to Sparadocus, and which were contemporary to the events which are described in the 2nd book of Thucydides. Here you can see a mounted horseman, which is something which is very typical for the Thracians and the coins from the region in general. The next thing we see, it is a long passage. It is Thucydides, book 2, 95 to 101. We will not quote it in its entirety, but here the expedition of Sitalces, after he became an ally to the Athenians, is described Sitalkes, the king of Thrace, who was at that time in alliance with Athens, but he also decided to attack not only the Chalcidians, which were in Thrace, the former Athenian allies that were in the northern Aegean and that were causing much trouble to the Athenians at that period, but he also made this expedition against Perdiccas, which at the same time was also an Athenian ally, but for some reason it doesn't seem that the Athenians were too much bothered that two of their allies are clashing one against each other. And in this passage, which you can see in the Perseus in Greek and in English, first the forces that Sitalkes gathered are thoroughly described. At first he gathered the Thracians, which were between the Haemus Mountains, which is today's Staroplana, the Balkan mountain range, and the Rhodope Mountains, so more or less the plain of the river Hebrus, today's Maritsa, up to the Black Sea and the Bosphorus. These were all his subjects. Then obviously his subjects, or at least people who owed him some sort of military service, were the Getae, the Thracian tribe of the Getae, which were in today's northeastern Bulgaria, and which are described by Thucydides as homoroi tetois kutais kai homoskevoi, as you can see here, which means they have a common boundary and a common, so to say, material culture as the Scythians, the Scythian tribes, which live in the northern part of the Black Sea, today's southern Ukraine and southern Russia to the east. And if we have the time, we will see some artifacts that will really prove that in that region, the Thracian art was much homoskevon to the Scythian or to the Iranian art in general. And then another part of his troops consisted of highland Thracians from the Rhodope Mountains, for the example, the so-called Dii, which were described by Thucydides as Mahairophoroi, which means that they carried long knives. How to say?
Long knives.
Long knives, short swords. Probably something like the artifacts that we know as Rompheas. And last but not least, some part of the Pyonian tribes, the Pyonian were Thracian tribes, which were divided between the kingdom of Sitalkes, the Odrysian kingdom, and the kingdom of Macedon. And the Pyonians, which were under his rule, which were called Agrianes and Laiaioi, Leans, were also levied under his flags. And do you see this map? Do you see this map?
Yes, we can see. Yes.
This is a map of contemporary Bulgaria. Well, if you look at what Thucydides is describing, he describes that his power, the power of Sitalkes, went up to the northern part of what is today's Dobruja plain, which is northeast of Bulgarian. And here you see, and to the west, it is it stops at the mountain. He says to the north of the mountain, which is called Skombros, and the tribes which live for the north of Skombros, which is curious enough today's capital of Bulgaria, Sofia, are already not in the power of the Odrysian kingdom. And here you can see today's view of Mount Skombros from the northern part, from the part which is not now which was not in the kingdom of Sitalkes. This is today's Sofia. So when we teach Thucydides to our students, archaeologists or classicists, you can read some passages and you can see that Thucydides is actually describing he probably did not see it personally, but he is describing something that we here at the, the University of Sofia we can see from our windows. So this is the mountain which was the border mountain of Sitalkes' reign, seen from today's Sofia. This is one of the greatest hotels in
we can't see the picture.
Can't you?
Okay. Yeah.
Here it is. It's a gorgeous mountain. He describes it as a bare mountain, but there were some forests in the meanwhile. And he entered with his army and in Macedonia from the north. Now we will see a plan which was in Margarita Tacheva's book, The Kings of Ancient Thrace. And the Macedonians retired into their strongholds because the forces, the armed forces, were too much for them, too many for them to deal with. And they sent forth their cavalry to oppose the invaders, but they were compelled by the inferiority of numbers to desist. And then, at some point, at the end of this passage, Thucydides tells us that Sitalkes holds a conference with Perdiccas, and after an unsuccessful campaign against two of the towns which were in the region, is persuaded by his nephew Seutes to return home. He had two sons, Seutes and this Parodokos, of which we saw some coins a while ago. And this Seutes was his nephew, and he inherited him to the throne after a while in 424. And Thucydides tells us that probably Seutes had been gained over by Perdiccas, by the Macedonian king, secretly. And it is also thought, in at least in Bulgarian scholarly literature, that this Seutes was much more pro-Lacedaemonian in his policy than pro-Athenian. At any case, after this expedition of Sitalkes, we hear no more of Thracian armed forces, which are engaged in the Peloponnesian War, either on the side of the Athenians or at the side of the Peloponnesians. The Odrysian kingdom simply stops to interfere in this conflict, and this unsuccessful expedition of Sitalkes, who decides that he will not have the force to take by force all the Chalkidian polis in northern Aegean, causes a bit of alarm in Hellas. And here is where we can see, here is a map of his expedition. Do you see it?
Yes, yes.
So here you see that the names are in Bulgarian because it is taken from a Bulgarian source, but you can recognize this is the peninsula of Chalkidike. Here is Therme, which the future city of Thessaloniki. He came from the bed of the Strymon River, and he then went across the mountains, across the mountain Kirkine, which is today's Ograzden mountain between Bulgaria and Macedonia, and he took by force several cities, Eidomene, Gortynia, Eusporos, and here's the Macedonian capital, here is Pella. So he was very, very near the capital, so it was very, very threatening situation for the Macedonian kingdom, but at some point he came to here, and here his forces somehow he became exhausted, and he decided to go back home. Otherwise, it was a very, very dangerous situation for the Kingdom of Macedon. But probably he decided that he will not have the forces, and he will not have the resources for a more continuous war than this. And now we can look at the short description which Thucydides makes in passing of the Odrysian kingdom in connection with Sitalkes' expedition. He says thus: the empire of the Odrysae, measured by the coastline, reaches from the city of Abdera, this is North Aegean, to the mouth of the Easter in the Euxine Pontus, which is Danube when it flows into the Black Sea. The voyage round can be made by a merchant vessel if the wind is favorable the whole way, at the quickest in 4 days and as many nights. Or an expeditious traveler going by land from Abdera to the mouth of the Easter, if he takes the shortest route, will accomplish the journey in 11 days. Such was the extent of the Odrysian Empire towards the sea. Up the country, the land journey from Byzantium to the Laeans and to the Strymon. Imagine nowadays the road from Sofia to Istanbul, so to say, the later Via Diagonalis of the Romans. So this journey, this being the longest line which can be drawn from the sea into the interior, may be accomplished by an expedition traveler in 13 days. This was something which was obviously very impressive for Thucydides. He also says that the tribute which was collected from the Hellenic cities, obviously Sitalkes also took tribute from the Hellenic cities, as well as Athens took the tribute from the Hellenic cities. We saw the tribute lists some sessions ago. And from all the barbarous nations in the reign of Seutes, the successor of Sitalkes, under whom the amount was the greatest, was valued at about 400 talents of coined money, reckoning only gold and silver. It is interesting actually to compare this with the Athenian tribute, for which we have very detailed accounts. It proves that more or less these are comparable amounts of money. Presents of gold and silver equal in value to the tribute, besides stuffs embroidered or plain and other articles, were also brought, not only to the king himself, but to the inferior chiefs and nobles of the Odrysae. For their custom was the opposite of that which prevailed in the Persian kingdom. They were more ready to receive than to give. And he who asked and was refused was not so much discredited as he who was refused when he was asked. So they loved presents, it seems. The same custom prevailed among the other Thracians in a less degree, but among the Odrysae, who were richer, more extensively. Nothing could be done without presents. Here we see some sort of exchange relationship. By these means, the kingdom became very powerful, and in revenue and in general prosperity exceeded all the nations of Europe, which lie between the Ionian Sea and the Euxine. This means all the nations on the Balkan Peninsula, including the Greek states, in the size and in the strength of their army, being second only, though far inferior, to the Scythians. So their number was great, and they were inferior only to the Scythians in their number, but also to as sheer military strength of their forces. For if the Scythians were united, there is no nation which could compare with them, or would be capable of resisting them. I do not say in Europe, but even in Asia. Not that they are at all on a level with other nations in sense, or in that intelligence which used to advantage the ordinary means of lives. So the Scythians are the first, and they're incomparable in the whole of Europe and in the whole of Balkans. And the Thracians of Sitalkes and Seutes come second to them. This is how he describes the Odrysian kingdom. And now some thoughts on the Siege of Amphipolis, which happened how much? 5 or 6 years later. Yes. Amphipolis was found at a place which was called Eneachodoi, the 9 roads, which were at the mouth of the Strymon River. Here you see a 19th century gravure of the ruins of Amphipolis. It was on a very strategical place, both military and as long as commerce goes. And the first attempts by Athens to colonize the region were made in 467 or 66, but the Athenian colonists were expelled by the local Thracian tribes, the same Adonians of which we saw coins a bit earlier. And then in the 30s we have a second attempt at colonizing Amphipolis, which was successful. And then there was an Athenian colony there, and which was gradually populated with people who were from the local Greek cities, and also probably some of the local Thracian populations. There were very, very few Athenians in the city itself, as Thucydides himself says. It is not the usual practice of putting an Athenian garrison in the city. There were not much Athenians in the city itself, but it was an allied city to Athenians, and at some point it was besieged by the Lacedaemonian king Brasidas. And at the same time, as we saw in some of the previous sessions, which were on that topic, at the same time, Thucydides himself was a general with the part of the fleet near the very nearby island of Thasos. Here is Thasos, here is Amphipolis. So you see it is very nearby, and here were Thucydides' estate in his gold mines. So he was sent there probably on purpose as being a very influential person in the region.
And knowing the area.
Yeah, knowing the area very well. And he arrived very late. When he arrived to Amphipolis, the city has already surrendered to Brasidas, and here is Thucydides' explanation why. Meanwhile, Brasidas, fearing the arrival of the ships from Thasos, Thucydides, and hearing that Thucydides had the right of working gold mines in the neighboring district of Thrace, and was consequently one of the leading men of the country, did his utmost to get possession of the city before his arrival. So Brasidas was very much afraid that, so to say, not only an Athenian general, but something like a local chief is arriving who has a great influence among the population. He was afraid that if Thucydides once came, the people of Amphipolis would no longer be disposed to surrender to Brasidas, that is. For that their hope would be that he would bring in allies from the islands or maritime towns or from the interior of Thrace and relieve them. So what did Brasidas do? He therefore offered moderate terms of surrendering, proclaiming that any Amphipolitan or Athenian, which were very few at the place at that period, might either remain in the city and have the enjoyment of his property on terms of equality, or if he preferred, might depart, taking his goods with him within 5 days. So he gave them the possibility to surrender before Thucydides arrives, promising them that nobody will be persecuted, nobody will be executed or his goods confiscated, and everybody who wishes to go away will be free to do so within 5 days. And this is why Amphipolis accepted Brasidas' terms and surrendered. And this is how not only the tale of Thucydides about the local affairs of the Northern Aegean ends, but this also ends his career as an Athenian strategos. It was mentioned some time ago in some of the sessions that after this, for next year, he was not only not re-elected as a strategos, but he was ostracized, he was expelled, and probably he spent happily his days until the rest of his life in his Thracian manor in Skapte Hule. One last thing from the slides here. As to Perdiccas, we see him, I don't know if you see very well, but we see him in an inscription. Here is a snapshot of the site of the Greek inscriptions of the Packard Humanities Institute, which will be also done in Epidoc XML but by some of our students. This is the so-called Methonian decree from the Athenians, which was issued at 424, so several years after Perdiccas was threatened by the Odrysian kingdom. And it seems that Perdiccas, our friend Perdiccas, and the city of Methone, which was, as you can see here, right on the opposite part of the Chalkidian Peninsula, the Chalkidiki, had some conflict concerning the right to pass through this gulf, and they decided to take Athens as being judge in this conflict. So we see how the alliance between Perdiccas and the local cities of the North Aegean was going on after Thucydides and after the Thracian armed forces left the scene. And now, for the time remaining, I will allow some time for questions, but we will also have I will also show you what we have been doing with our archaeology students. Do you see the map?
No, not yet. We need some time. The connection needs some time.
Добре, де, аз екрана, нали съм си го споделил? What about now?
No, I still see you.
In the meanwhile, if anybody has some questions, comments, I'll be free to answer. Can you see it now?
No. Are you sharing the entire screen?
Yes.
I don't know why.
What about now?
No. Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
Now, yes. Okay. Good.
So what you see here in red are all the places concerning this description of the Odrysian kingdom and the expedition mentioned in Thucydides. Here are the cities which were besieged by Gortynia, Idumene, the cities which were besieged by Sitalkes, Botiea, which he didn't manage to. Here is Therme on the site of
with
later.
The text in Thucydides.
Yes, we have the text in Greek, in English, and in Bulgarian. And on the other hand, here in blue, you see objects and artifacts which were at the same time to be found in Bulgaria, and which were described in the site of the Institute for Art Studies of Bulgarian Academy of Sciences. Here you can see, here, which is a bit to the north of this Skombros mountain, the Vituše mountain that you see, here we can find a coin by the Adonian tribe, which was very, very similar to the Adonian coins we saw. Do you see it?
Yes, yes, we can see perfectly well.
All the links are in that. You can of course we have some also some Greek coins from the Greek colonies on Black Sea. Here is one from Mesambria, which was a Megarian colony, and this is an obolus from 5th century BC with this Metambrion.
With Sampi.
Yeah, this
is
the
same period of Sitalkes.
Yes. You can also see by that time a very curious artifact is found. This was not what I was. Târnicevi Svetицата. This is there are also some very curious finding in Thracian burial tombs, which were these Thracian burial tombs are particularly on the southern slopes of the Balkan mountain range, and some of them date from the 5th century BC. So they were technically they were in the kingdom of this Sitalkes, and probably belonged to some of the local aristocrats that Sitalkes himself took tribute from. And here is one very interesting gold mask, which is to be found from this burial tomb, which resembles very, very much the Mycenaean masks that you found. So we have some kind of Mycenaean burial art which existed in Thrace centuries after the rituals, the types of tombstones and the types of burials has ceased existing in Greece itself. Here you can you see the burial masks?
Yeah. Wow.
So, yeah, this is it. I can show you some more artifacts, but in the meanwhile, if you have some questions or comments, here you see a very beautiful application on something which was supposed to be a belt, hunting belt.
Well, so this map is very interesting because so you have places, and then I can see that for each place you have some annotations with a description or with the text of Thucydides, and then in red, and in blue you have objects with the link to the database. And do you also do you also have the URIs from Pleiades for the place names? Maybe you can add them for the places where you have IDs.
Yes.
Yeah, and then
all these places were located using Pleiades.
Okay. Excellent.
The URIs are not inserted, but we will do this. This is at some middle stage of preparation. Okay. The final stage will be probably at the end of June. We will have everything ready. And by that time, we will also have something which I now will make another group of my students do, the Athenian tribute lists. Probably the cities which were more or less in this region. So we will see how the places mentioned in Thucydides, which are in red from this region, correspond to the Athenian tribute list, and at least one of the cities figures in both. He figures as this Aeon. Yes, Aeon, which they have given it in accusative, but I will correct that. This city of Aeon, which was the city which Thucydides managed to get hold on. So it was both a Thracian city and also a city which was a Greek polis and paid tribute to the Athenians, and which was an Athenian ally. So probably it will be there will be some sort of merging several categories together to see how do they correspond. They are related.
Okay, so this you are producing a sort of map of the tribute list for this part of Greece. So this is exactly what we are looking for this Sunaikisis course. So you are combining different data, and for the inscriptions, if I understood correctly, you are marking up the inscriptions with the guidelines.
Called Methonian decree. Methonian is here on that map. It's not marked yet, which considers the relationship between Perdiccas, which is a hero in the passage we were concerned with, and another Greek city, which was a Greek tributary, and also from that region. We are looking for inscriptions which mention Sparotokos at least, but I don't know if there is any inscription known. Fortunately, there are not any inscriptions that mention Sitalkes or Sparodokos from Athens itself.
It's too early.
It's too early. The Athenian inscriptions don't mention it, and our local epigraphical heritage is more abundant for later periods.
Okay, excellent. So thank you very much. And there are other questions? Well, it's 6:30, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, but well, really, thank you very much because thank you for this common session because we have seen the sources. So we could read Thucydides and follow Thucydides in Thrace, and then we have the data because we have the map and the information about the places and objects. So linking all this data together. And so really, it's really great. So this was the last common session of the section about objects, text, and places. And from next week, we start with the third section, which is about tree banking and linguistic annotations, and we will have Anise Ferreira from Brazil. This will be the first common session about tree banking and linguistic annotations. We have our Google Plus community for questions. If you have questions about this common session, so we still have. Well, we don't have time today, but we have the Google Plus community and the wiki. And then we will have in the last common session we will summarize all these things, and we will still have time for other questions. So if there are no other questions, I can stop broadcasting. Thank you very much for the work that you have done. Really, it was a great pleasure, and thank you also to your students who are producing the map. And so please put the link in the wiki so we can follow your work, which is very exciting. Okay, so thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Bye bye, and see you next week. Bye.